Welcome to Leadership Where It Matters Most. The family is the most important institution in the world. The future of the church passes through the family. The church has the greatest mission of any organization ever. Go and make disciples of all nations. The family and the church. This is where leadership matters most. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into Leadership Where It Matters Most. Today's guest is Hannah Jakus. Now, who is Hannah Jakus, you ask? Well, that's a really good question. And there are many things that Hannah is by character and aptitude and competence and accomplishment. But most important to me is that Hannah's my daughter. She's my oldest daughter. She's the mother of Andrew and I's fourth grandchild as well. She is very pregnant at the time of this recording, ready to give birth any day. In fact, by the time it's released online, she might even have the baby already. So that's how close it is. So I really wanted to have a conversation with Hannah, and I think I'm going to have conversations with multiple children over time. But one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Hannah is because, there are some young adult listeners that are in the midst of transition, things that they're going through, whether it's getting married or finding a new job that's really more of a career than kind of a part-time job, or, getting married and having children. Lots of transition. Hannah is in the midst of it. And I really just wanted to unpack a lot of things of the heart with her as she was going through all of her different transitions. So she's just completing she just finished her master's in counseling psychology at Trinity Western University. And we talked a lot about some of her experience of that, not only what she learned, but some of the harder experiences she had, especially towards the end of her time at Trinity and the difficulty in finally getting the degree, which you'll hear about. We talk about the BC regulatory body and how they handle counseling and regulating the industry, if you will, and how it's a little bit of a Wild West kind of situation because anyone can call themselves a counselor. But there are opportunities for those who have the education and formation that would lead to actual accreditation. So she does kind of walk us through that a little bit. We talk about what was motivating her desire to go into this, what was motivating her desire for the short-lived time that she got into social media influencing. We talk about, just the intersection of psychology and faith. We talk about her role at the parish and the gaps that she has seen in terms of leadership formation with pastoral leaders and leaders in the church community. So really rich conversation. I just enjoyed it. Kind of got lost a little bit just talking to my daughter. So it was good. I hope and trust this will be edifying, particularly for all the young adult listeners. Enjoy the episode with Hannah Jakus. My daughter, Hannah. How are you?
Good, Dad. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for coming on. I'm really excited about this. Aren't you? Would excitement be the word that you use to describe your experience right now?
I'm excited, but I feel jittery. My palms are sweating a bit, but I don't know. I'm trying to just think it's a conversation with my dad, so we'll be fine.
We will be fine. I am really looking forward to this. I've already done the episode introduction, so I won't do that again, but I know there's a lot of listeners that would know who you are, but maybe for some who don't. Hannah, who is Hannah Jakus? Tell us about you.
Yeah. First and foremost, always the greatest identity is daughter of God. Also a new wife, a new mom to a baby boy that is hopefully coming any day now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And counselor, leader. I would say I'm still a student as well, just a student and learner at heart too. Yeah, and hopefully just a lover as well.
So just to timestamp this, when Hannah says, mother, she's expecting. She is very close, literally any day, any hour. Hopefully not when we're recording.
I actually, before this, I was praying. I was like, okay, Lord, like whatever you want, but maybe not right now. Maybe that
not right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's any day now. So Hannah will be expecting. So just to timestamp this, by the time this is released, you might actually have a baby. We'll see.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Mm-hmm.
So, Hannah, you just completed your master's in counseling psychology from Trinity Western University.
Yes.
So why don't we start that because it's very familiar with you. You've been engaged in it for a long time. So when did you know that you wanted to enter that program?
That specific program I would say it was my last year of undergrad. So I always knew that I wanted to do psychology. Actually, since I was in grade 7, something happened within the family that I just was really drawn to the brain and everything that happens in the brain. And so my last year of my undergrad, I was finishing my honors thesis, and I was starting to just really consider the careers that psychology had. And it's kind of an unspoken thing that when you get an undergrad in psychology, you have to continue on to grad
Hmm.
school because that's where all the jobs are. And I really thought that I wanted to do neuroscience. And so I talked to a professor that I really admired, and he actually set me up with a neuroscientist at BC Women's Hospital. I don't know if you remember this. I came to
I
visit.
remember this. You betcha I do.
Yeah, I came to visit you at work. I think we had lunch, and then I walked over and I got to meet this wonderful lady. But within like 2 minutes of the conversation, I almost completely checked out because I was like, this is not what I want to do at all. Her job, and this isn't generalized to most neuroscientists, but her job was to read brain scans. Patients didn't even have names, they had numbers, deliver news to families, and go do the same thing and kind of leave families to process whatever was on those brain scans.
Hmm.
And in my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, who is with those families that get these horrible or good news to their 4-year-old, to their 40-year-old mom, to whoever? And I realized that where I really wanted to be was with people in their suffering and with people when they are dealing with distress, dealing with life transitions, dealing with grief, all the feelings that come with just lived experience. And I knew that was counseling. And so my final year of my undergrad, I decided to take all the pre-counseling courses just to give me a better chance of getting into grad school. And I think I applied within 2 months. It really worked out. Definitely God's will was there, that the timeline of when I decided to do this and when I could apply was in 2 months. And then February of my last year, I was finishing my final thesis and then I got the letter.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely an experience for sure.
Do
Yeah.
you want
Yeah.
to say more about that? Do you want to talk about it?
Always.
Hmm.
I think I just got the letter. I wasn't even finished my undergrad yet because it was, well, the letter was, you're accepted with contingent that you continue getting the grades you have, you finish all of that. I remember running downstairs to mom and like freaking out. She was like, "What's wrong? Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" And I was like,
Hmm.
"Nothing." And then I just started crying. And I'll always remember this because she just looked at me and she just said, "This must feel so good. All your hard work has paid off." And I just like hugged her and I just like collapsed and I was just crying and laughing and she was just holding me and it just felt so good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that experience with the neuroscientist because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I'm helping men get clear on their values, their personal values, so they can live a real kind of passionate, integrated life, I do an exercise which is to either kind of evaluate an experience that was like a peak experience whereby you were really living and embracing a value that you have, whatever that might be. The other is a valley experience where you were experiencing something whereby the values that you have were almost being violated or just not honored. And so I just want to pause and reflect on that experience with a neuroscientist because it was almost both. It was like, clearly, this is not something I want to do. But at a deeper level, there was something stirring within you, a value whereby you were concerned that, families weren't being met. How are they doing emotionally? Like, is that a good lens to kind of put some language around that discernment for you, that experience of discernment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the checking out was the experience of the value not fitting.
Hmm.
But then I think after on reflecting and like feeling bad that my professor had lined this up for me and I just completely, it was like a 5-minute conversation that I was hoping would be longer. After reflecting on it, I think I asked myself, why did I check out in the first place? Why was I so restless? I think was the word with what we talked about. And that's where I think after reflecting and a lot of thinking, the value the values that matter to me kind of came more forward for sure.
Awesome. Okay. So, I mean, you're done. You've got your master's. I saw you walk across the stage. It was beautiful
Yeah.
with, it was wonderful. But when you look back on it now, because that was a long time ago. A lot of life has kind of crossed under the bridge. Was everything is exactly how you expected it? Maybe what was a surprise in that journey?
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of personal stuff amidst the academic as well. The jump from undergrad to grad school, I don't know how my professors in my undergrad could have prepared me for that, because
Mm,
I think the first thing I was reflecting on was you go from being an undergrad and you're pursuing a master's degree, and so you're in a small honors cohort. Your GPA is high, you're considered like one of the smartest in your cohort. Then you get to grad school and everyone around you is ridiculously intelligent in different ways. Like some are more philosophical, some are just relationally genius. And you kind of feel like this big. You feel really small. And I
mm,
think that surprised me for sure when I first walked into the classroom. It just dawned on me that these are very driven, dedicated people who are willing to do whatever it takes to succeed in the program,
mm,
and willing to do potentially like the unhealthy things like stay up all night and do assignments and do homework. And you kind of just feel a little bit like, okay, who am I again? And you kind of go through a bit of an identity, not crisis, but just you're very aware of that. And the opinions that people have with grad school too, people tend to hold them more strongly than they did in undergrad. And they have the intelligence, the vernacular to express those opinions.
mm.
And so then you're thinking, what do I actually believe? What do I think of this? So that was one thing that really surprised me, especially the first year,
Mm,
and humbled me for sure. And with that came like the introspection and the reflecting on how much of my identity I put into how smart I was, quote unquote, smart I was, or what I could do, what I could produce, how much work I could handle, how many
mm,
assignments I could get done, how many A's I could get. So that humbling experience, this was the first year I would say it really hit me hard
mm.
for sure. Yeah, that's one big thing.
I wonder why the first year it was like that. And I'm asking from a place of real sincerity because I remember when I entered my program and I went to my first residency intensive, and they had this particular exercise that we were engaged in. And I was in such a disoriented state. I remember saying to this one person in my cohort, I've never felt so misunderstood in my entire
Mm,
life,
mm,
because it's like, and the reason why I'm asking, I wonder if it's because your first year, like in your first year, you're kind of measuring yourself up. You don't really know these people. They're all presenting a particular way, maybe some of them in exaggerated form and, all that. So there's a naturalness to that first year being like that. Now, when did that kind of calm down? Was it more an experience of seeing people that they all have their own foibles and idiosyncrasies and all that, or was it more just confidence in you? Like, can you remember that journey when it kind of clicked that, oh, I'm comfortable, I'm good, I can do
yeah.
this?
Yeah. I think it was after taking one class with a particular professor. I've talked about him before, Martin
Mm,
Bartel. Such a, oh my gosh, such a beautiful counselor, such a humble man. And I learned a lot from him. And his big thing was he taught that who you are as a person and as a therapist has to actually come out in therapy. So clients can tell when you're not being yourself.
mm,
And it was almost like permission to have different opinions than your colleagues, permission to grow into who you are, permission to be different after that class. And with counseling, I think they do a really good job at Trinity to tell us that who we are is like 70% of the therapeutic relationship, and to not be ashamed of who we are, to acknowledge our biases, And so when you're given permission to do that, you kind of step into it more. And I think the more you're around people, the more you just get to know their humanness and their personhood. And the good thing about grad school is people can be in relationship with each other and disagree with each other with how they conceptualize a person or they conceptualize suffering. For the most part, that was my experience, which probably is not everybody's experience, but for the most part, that was mine. But it was after that class, and Martin himself lives it. He's unashamedly himself. He brought up faith in the classroom. He brought up interventions that he does that are not scandalous, but they are. And he's just so himself. And by him being himself, and I guess by him living his values and being who he is, he gave all of us permission to do the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that was summer of the first year.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you've spoken often very highly of Martin. Maybe he'll listen to this episode and be blessed by that. But one of the things he said, and then you shared that other professors would say it, but it seems risky in the counseling world to let yourself come out. I forget the language, which seems to be almost the opposite of what I would anticipate they say because of what is the term called? Transference? Is that what it is?
And countertransference. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe what is transference? And then why is that, being able and having enough humility and groundedness to allow yourself to come out? How is that almost, I don't know, precarious in relation to transference? Does that make sense, my question?
I think so. Yeah, I'll start somewhere and then you can guide me if I'm going somewhere else. Basically, the best definition I've heard of this is you are aware of yourself in the room, you are aware of your client in the room, and you're aware of the dance that you're doing together. And so when you're aware of the client in the room, you're aware of how you are experiencing their humanness. Maybe they remind you of someone. Maybe certain things trigger you about them. And then you're also aware of yourself and your own reactions, your curiosity, your lack of curiosity towards someone. Another big one is with one client, if they say one thing, you have kind of oh yeah, that makes sense. And then if another client says the same thing, you're like, nope, that doesn't make sense. You should be aware of, why am I thinking that way? And it's not a lot of counselors get really confused sometimes because it's not a questioning of yourself and your ability. It's a questioning of your biases, and it's a questioning of the dance in the room. And so you are to be yourself in the room, but I think we all can say we've had moments where we're authentically ourselves, but we also hold back a little bit. Clients don't need to know everything you're thinking. We shouldn't share everything we're thinking. That's something called self-disclosure, and it's actually taught to be a very intimate thing that you are careful of. And yeah, I think I'll let you respond and then see if I have anything else to say.
No, that all makes a lot of sense. I don't know if this is a pedestrian way of understanding, but I like the language you used around understanding the dance that's going on. And to me, that's where the magic is. When you have that level of self-awareness and self-possession, it's like you have an external observer, even though you're observing yourself, which that's an incredible gift God has given human beings that perhaps other animals do not possess. I don't really know how that works, but that ability to possess that and to observe things that are happening, even internally, is just such a valuable gift. But when we don't operate with that way, you can become very reactive or almost like instinctual, like you're just operating out of a place of instinct, which is not what we're called to.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, reactionary things you take things more personal.
But you can even have a sense of humor with yourself. Like you can come to awareness that a client 2 hours before said something and this client is saying the same thing. Why am I pissed off at this person for saying this?
Yeah.
It's like you have this awareness. Oh, I have judgments with this person. That's good for you to know before you start prescribing something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to seek supervision and to seek mentorship too, like the person outside of the situation is always a good idea. I did have a client one time where almost, and I can say this, almost everything he said, I felt like I wanted to roll my eyes a little bit. And I noticed I was like, this is not good. I cannot help you if I'm feeling this way towards you. And so I had a supervision session with Martin. And he just said to me that we need to find a way to get your curiosity back, because if there's no curiosity in the room, you are not going to ask good questions and you're not going to see him and his suffering at all. And he just blatantly told me that. And he allowed me to say what was bothering me about this client. And he didn't validate me, but he was like, oh, that would make sense with your story, why you would react the way that you reacted. And so it is all about getting that curiosity back with the client and seeing them as a person and seeing what they're dealing with and remaining on their side.
That reminds me of something that Jordan Peterson said when he talks about, basically says, if you're not finding yourself really curious with the conversation you're having with the person in front of you, then you're not listening hard enough, because every person is, and their story is magnificent and unique and all that, right?
Yeah. A lot of people have said that. Brene Brown was the one who said, like, it's hard to hate people up close too. Get closer.
Okay. So one of the things that's neat about the program, and maybe it's like this with all programs, and I didn't prepare you for this, sorry about that, Hannah, but you seemed, at least from the perspective of a father of a young adult woman, you seem to get into counseling, actual counseling situations, like with real clients, really fast.
Yes.
Like 5 minutes into the program, you're in counseling sessions.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like, what was your first session like? What did you find out about yourself? Like, what was that journey like?
Oh my gosh. So I'm pretty sure this is unique to Trinity, but we start seeing clients in October. We start the degree in September. And we are in a practicum setting with about 4 or 5 other colleagues, and we have a supervisor. And basically, Trinity has a clinic, and all of the sessions are recorded. It's low-cost counseling, so every client that walks in knows that they're being recorded, that this is for a master's degree. Everything is point blank, and the clients know about it. And so I remember being around the room, and we had a list of clients that had okayed, and they went through their informed consent. They went through confidentiality with our supervisor. And we had a list of clients, and our supervisor started to talk about it. Like, okay, so we have like a 14-year-old girl. We have like a 17-year-old male who's asking counseling for this. And then we have a 40-some-year-old male who's struggling with X, Y, and Z. And all of my colleagues were young women, and no one wanted the 40-some-year-old male. And for some reason, I think this is just who I am and my personality. I was like, I'll do it. Like, I'll try. And the first session, and I'm also like, I'm mixing details, so we keep confidentiality and all that. He came in, and I remember the first session, I was shaking uncontrollably. For sure. And very imposter syndrome in my head. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no business talking to. At that point, the thing in my head was giving advice to someone like this who was dealing with what he was dealing with. But of course, now I know that's not what counseling is, but that was back then. And I remember being so upset that I was so nervous that I actually threw my clipboard down. Because when you're nervous, you start to like I have my clip here that I need if I get nervous. And so I started to fiddle with my clipboard, and I got mad at myself with how nervous I was. And so I threw my clipboard down, and I leaned in, and I just started asking him things that felt real and felt true. But I forgot that I was being recorded. I forgot that people were watching me. And I was just like, okay, it's just you and me in the room. I'm just going to try this. Like, I'm just going to see how it goes, like person to person. And then when I left and I went back into the room, my supervisor said I did a good job, which, of course, when you're new to a situation, you just eat that up.
No kidding.
So, yeah, it was definitely very scary, but I love that Trinity does that they really throw you in, because it's not textbook. Counseling is not textbook learning. It's being with people and real people who have real problems.
Yeah. Wow. That I remember you sharing very discreetly, keeping confidential and all that, but about that experience. But I don't remember the clipboard thing.
Yeah.
So what was going on there? Was it just like was it a holy frustration? Like, I don't want to be in shackles and chains
Mm.
worrying about this. I just want to be free. So I'm just gonna go for something, and if it's right, great. If it's not, I've learned something.
I guess so, but I think it was also just how could I be free to be myself and therefore help this person in front of me if I'm so wrapped up in my own anxiety and in my own worry?
Hmm.
And I think I realized in the moment what was making me so anxious was this list of expectations that I had to do, which right when you get into grad school, it's a long list of expectations that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had written on the clipboard was after reading the case, I had written questions beforehand to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden in that moment, this could be like another value thing. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this means I'm not listening if I have all of these questions beforehand. But being a new graduate student, I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. I have to be prepared. I have to show that I care. But it blocked the
Mm.
conversation and the dance in the room by me being too prepared and me feeling, oh, I will feel prepared if I have this, forgetting that I am sitting in the presence of another person.
Wow, that's really interesting. There are many times, I'm sure, where people struggle with the same thing. Many leaders are put in uncomfortable situations where they don't feel prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So the very act of preparing, if it's done too much or whatever, can leave you blind from what's actually unfolding and actually responding in the moment the way you should.
Yeah.
Which, when you look at the life of Jesus, I don't think he was ever, sitting off by himself making notes about what's going to happen. He
No.
just responded, right? So some of that has to be just the grace of being grounded in who you are, who you're not, and being okay with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. One, and also like calling on the Holy Spirit too in those moments, like just a really brief under your breath, come Holy Spirit, tell me what to say, tell me what to
Mm.
do, all of that. I think even motherhood is people ask you questions out of like a nicety and they're genuine, but even those questions are very interesting with how prepared you should be to have a new baby in your life. Yeah. As if you could be prepared for that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we could probably move away from your time, but is there anything else that you'd want to talk about just in your journey with your master's program? Maybe some of the harder seasons you had to go through, or I don't know, some lesson you learned about yourself. Anything else?
I mean, the final exam part, I could talk about that. I don't know what kind of questions you want to ask for that, but you
Why
were
don't we
right
talk about the very first time you and I was in the car
there.
giving
Yeah.
you a call, not knowing what the heck was on the other end? No, go for it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, this to provide some context, Mark and I got married September 14th. I was to take my final exam October 1st. We got back from our honeymoon September 18th. And then I found out I was pregnant September 30th. And October 1st, the next day, was my final exam. So right away, I was trying so hard to stay focused, but I couldn't. I was so excited also, and nervous, and scared, and so many other feelings. And what they do is they give you the exam on like a Friday morning. You have all weekend to prepare. And basically, they give you like a case, they give you a client, and they ask you to speak on various things, ethical and legal implications. They ask you to conceptualize the suffering based on your theoretical orientation that you are choosing to practice from. And you prepare as much as you can, 6 questions that probably have 12 questions within them that you have
Mm.
to talk about. And it's an oral exam, which I don't mind doing, but I find that at least I think I write better. And so that was already pretty nerve wracking for me. And then so I walked into the exam. I thought I killed it. I thought I nailed it. But then they called me back and they said, yep, you passed with revisions. And I immediately felt like I failed
Mm.
because passing in revisions in grad school just doesn't sit right. it just was, again, another very humbling experience. And as they were giving me feedback, I felt so misunderstood. But I didn't want to be defensive either because it was an exam and I was, trying to watch my own reactions. And then I think after I called you right away, and I think I yelled and I swore and I was so upset. I can't even remember what I said to you. It was just like red in that moment. I felt so defeated and I was so mad. Yeah. I don't know. I want to ask you to remember what I said, but then I don't want you to repeat it.
No, I don't remember exactly what you said, although if I thought about it for a moment, I might. But you were very frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, angry, frustrated. Yeah, there was a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm. But then I did it again. Like I did the revision piece and I had to redo it. And I was like, what does pass with revisions mean then? So I had to redo it. I had to redo this exam in some form 4 times.
Yep.
And the 4th time they say if you don't complete it, you have to wait another semester to graduate. And by then, like the 4th time, it was November. I was supposed to graduate in December. I was in the thick of first trimester, like nauseous and sick, feeling like a horrible wife because I couldn't cook anything. And also newly married, like also that transition of someone else is here all the time and in my space all the
time. Yep.
All of those transitions were happening while this was happening. And it was hard. I think I went from feeling defeated to just kind of feeling numb. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever felt that before. Yeah, because usually I'm usually very heart-led. I lead with like emotion in my life usually. And I was feeling nothing. It was just like survival at that point.
Yeah. Do you think numb was just that, like survival? Like, I don't want to put too much into this. What if this continues to not go the way I want it to?
Yeah, I think I was also upset that this was happening while some beautiful things were happening on the side, like being newly married, like very in love, like finding out we're having a baby, to now dealing with this. I was honestly a little bit mad at God too. Like, why is this robbing so much of my joy and so much of my peace when I know that there's so much happening that is so beautiful around me? And I just don't care anymore. Like I'm done. Like, and they do say that like with grad school that you kind of emotionally check out towards the end because it's so tedious and it's a lot of work and a lot of hours. But I think with everything personally that was also happening, I was really upset that this was robbing so much of my joy and my peace and like my headspace. I was constantly thinking about it and not thinking about other things that I really wanted to think about. Like, how can I be, what is the wife that God wants me to be? Okay, now I'm a mom. What the heck? Like all those things that I wanted to reflect on, I didn't have space to. Yeah. So it was almost too much that I went numb instead of like the opposite. Some people go like the overreacting, the emotional. I just went the other way, just numb. Yeah.
So there's this phrase that's out there, common vernacular, about, when you go through an experience and then somebody either jokes about it or wants to talk about it, and you say too soon, too soon. And I think there's a secular understanding of that somehow the passage of time will allow healing, or I don't know what it is. But I think as Christians, we can say that too soon, but the full statement is too soon because I don't know what the Lord was up to in that yet.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, he is the author of everything and he allows these things to happen. So is it too soon to see the Father's hand in that? Or is there some understanding now that you have? It's like, okay, maybe this was the benefit or this was whatever. But I didn't prepare you for this. So maybe it is just say, too soon, Dad, shut up. I don't know.
I think also the too soon thing is, and this is also like a counseling thing, there will be moments in everyone's life where the time to process is not now. The time to think deeply is not now. So like a very classic example of this is like a client will come in and they're dealing with getting evicted, and they also want to process their mom's trauma in childhood. There is some beauty and wisdom in saying, let's deal with like this eviction problem first, because if we go down this path of processing, it might be too much too soon. And so that, I would say now, with that situation, I always try to like reflect on these things, especially if I start questioning, my father in heaven and all that, like, which is a good thing. Like, it just means we're going to get closer after this because I'm going to understand why he did that. In that season, I had no idea how much Marco had cared for me and picked up things around the house without any sort of complaining and without any comments of like, this is not what I thought marriage would be. Like, none of that. I felt very cared for by him. And the way that he held my frustration and didn't take it personally, and I broke down in his truck in the garage, and the way he just sat there and just listened, I think that was part of the situation. Was my reflection with marriage is, what can I do? What can I produce? How can I do this? But I'm learning very slowly that I am not good at letting other people care for me. And I am not good at accepting help. And it actually hurts people close to me when I don't let them. And so that was a big thing when I look back. That was a couple months ago. I just kind of had a realization that Marco really cared for me in that crisis. And I'm sure he did so many things that I didn't even see either. Yeah. And that's been a common theme too, is allowing people to care for me and love me. And when I don't, it hurts my relationships. Yeah, that's one thing. Other stuff I'll keep to myself.
Fair enough. That's a beautiful reflection and good description of a good man that you happen to be married to.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Well done, Marco.
I'll show him this part.
Just this part. Okay, so we're going to have an abrupt change in our conversation. I want to allow you to kind of explain to people the varied nature of regulatory control or oversight in sort of counseling and in psychology, because it's all provincial jurisdiction stuff. And BC, to those who know people in counseling and touch it regularly, we understand that there's actually no regulatory body in BC. No. So maybe help people understand, what the heck does that actually mean, and how does that impact the industry?
Yeah. Okay. So first, you're right in that each province kind of makes their own decisions with this. So there are provinces in Canada that are regulated: Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia. And so what the lack of a regulatory body, this is kind of what I understand it to be. I'm still quite new to this as well, so hopefully my language makes sense. But there is still confusion, disagreement among what educational requirements, other policies, other requirements are needed for counselors to practice what they practice. And so BC currently does not have a regulatory body, but it does have something called the BC ACC, which you can apply to be a member of. And I have applied to be a member. I've actually been approved. July 1st is when I get my number, where I'm a registered clinical counselor in BC. And what that means is there was a list of requirements that I had to prove that I had to be a part of this particular membership. So those things were a master's degree, which is 3-4 years of school. You had to have X amount of hours. I can't remember exactly, but different kinds of hours, like one-on-ones with clients, group hours, video sessions. You had to have a minimum of 100 supervisor hours, meaning that you were sat down with a supervisor and they critiqued, gave feedback. And you have to hand in all your transcripts, which includes particular courses that they deem this is what you need to be considered a registered counselor at the BCACC. You've had to take ethics. You've had to know like the legal implications of counseling and have a certain grade in that class. And then once all that's done, you send it in, and then they will email 2 of your supervisors to send in recommendation emails. Oh, wow. Yeah. And there's particular questions that they have to sign, and they have to send it back. It's like, it could be like a 6 to 8 month process getting all this paperwork together. And then after that, the final thing is once everything's sent, you have to hand in a criminal record check as well. And so after all of that's done and they've reviewed it, your application is considered approved or denied. And then you get a number and you're a registered clinical counselor in BC. So implications for the practice, it's my own personal opinion is the fact that counselor being what it is, being with people in their suffering, sharing very intimate things about other people in the world. The idea for me that counselor is not a protected title does scare me a little bit because anyone can call themselves a counselor then, or even some of the words like life coach. That's been kind of something that's been flown around as well. And it's kind of up to the client to do their research on what this means. When already counseling and the language is sometimes, it's hard to understand for people who are not in the profession. And so I do wonder sometimes, why is it up to the client to kind of like, oh, is this counselor registered, regulated? Do they even know to ask that question first? The other implication that's very important is a lot of insurance companies in BC and trying to break the barrier that counseling is expensive and trying to break that. Insurance companies will cover you for counseling, but only if your counselor is a registered clinical counselor.
Yeah.
And so a client, again, has to do the work to see if you're registered, how much of their insurance covers it. Does my particular insurance even cover it? And counseling is expensive. Like it's $130 to $170 for an hour. Yeah. So those are some of the implications for the practice for sure. And they've been saying, my ethics professor said that they've been saying they're trying to get regulated for years now. So
Yeah.
Who knows why not? I don't know those conversations. I'm not part of those conversations. I'm assuming there's a lot more happening than counselors know about. But who knows when it's going to happen? I've heard at the beginning of my master's program, they said it would be next year. And then at the end of it, they said it'd be next year. So
Wow.
Who knows? Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's actually the best explanation of the registered RCC, registered clinical counselor, that I've heard. And that makes a lot of sense. So it seems like there is, for those who have gone through the robust training and formation needed, there is a process whereby they are honored for that.
Yes.
That's the RCC process, where because it's not regulated, the negative consequence that still anybody can just call themselves a counselor.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not there for those who have the ability to demonstrate they've done what's required, but it's the fact that everybody can say, or anybody can say, I'm a counselor.
Yeah. And
Right.
even like within that, there's so many layers and details because it says like masters from an accredited university or institution. And so people can go get these master's degrees or these certificates of counseling, post it on the office and post it, but it's not necessarily accredited. So there's so many details and layers to it that it's unfortunate that there's so much like psychological jargon that I would argue that a lot of clients who just want help just don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And Trinity has a very good reputation and credibility in this space.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do. Part of the reason why I wanted to go there. Yeah. They have a good rep.
Okay. Great. Thank you. That's really good. Where do we want to go with this now? Should we talk about social media?
Sure.
So my daughter Hannah had a short but very intense experience in being a social media influencer. You probably still are.
Definitely not. I would not use that language.
But why don't you just give an overview of kind of what you got into, why, what it led to, some self-awareness about that experience. Is that a good general enough segue?
I think so, yeah. So this was during COVID, actually. So almost prime time to become, as you say, a social media influencer. I think we all were social media influencers with baking our breads and making our coffees and all that.
That was a crazy season. Oh
yeah.
my Lord.
Yeah, everyone was on their phones. But how it started was actually like selling products online, selling health products online, which I don't actually like to talk about because I still feel a bit of shame with that because a lot of the products were health products, and like I would be posting pictures and things that triggered a lot of things. And as like someone who was interested in counseling, it just kind of felt like this doesn't feel right anymore. Like this, I'm posting this stuff on social media. I'm adding to the comparison trap. I'm not doing something that I like, but I did make some money on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I flipped it and I changed it to actually writing, starting a blog and then writing. And by then I think I had almost like 4,000 followers, something like that. And so the writing just kind of took off. And I wrote about so many different things. And I would write on the Instagram captions, then I'd write on the blogs. I tried to keep up with making reels and all those sorts of things. And I've kind of started to focus on like things that were going on in the world. So COVID was happening. And I noticed that I felt listened to by a lot of people, which I think with social media is kind of a catch-22, because are people actually listening to you? And it felt good, like with people messaging me, asking me to speak on certain topics. My posts would get shared. Companies would actually start asking if I could promote certain things. Actually, Sanctuary Mental Health, I think they're in BC.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me to promote and they paid me for it as well. And because I was starting to speak on mental health a little bit more too. And I got free things. People sent me stuff. Like, it felt good. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm actually doing something with this. But the turning point was when people started to ask me to speak on certain things that I didn't feel comfortable or even right speaking on these things on social media, with disembodied words, not being able to hear the tone of someone's voice, the body language, not being able to hear context or story or like where people are perceiving what I'm saying. And people would actually get upset if I didn't post about certain things and didn't share certain things. And I would like read my DMs and some of them would get really angry and upset. And they would say things like, if you're not posting about this, we know what you believe. I'm not following you anymore. You just lost a follower, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And it became like a question of, am I living this life on social media for other people and what they want to hear? And I was on my phone, I think like 13 hours a day, writing and responding to DMs. And even that just felt so not what I wanted to do. It started to feel like a waste of time. And it just started to feel like social media was giving an ego boost of like, I have something to say. People want to listen to me. That was quite false, because it was based on what people wanted me to say. And if they disagreed, they would be very vocal and open about it.
Is it hard to talk about? Like, this is, I know you and I have spoke about some of this, but is it, is it hard to talk about?
Not really, no, because I think social media has, and everything, social media, AI, all of that, like there's some beauty with it, and God's allowing it to happen for a reason. But it just didn't feel like me. And honestly, the more I did counseling and the more I was in that world, the more private I felt like I wanted to be as well, which included like posting certain people and also posting certain opinions. Because then I started to think, if a client stumbles upon this Instagram and sees what I believe about this situation, are we going to be able to be cool with each other in the room? And so I started to just see it almost more as a barrier to being with people and like doing the job that I wanted to do. And the idea of like, I have something to say, like people are wondering what I think about these things, it wasn't as attractive anymore. And I think that was just a young Hannah mindset as well, where, you want to be seen, you want to be known. And that was how it was showing itself, I guess.
Yeah. I was recently in Edmonton at a conference, sort of Catholic AI, I guess you can say. Not like AI that is Catholic, but a Catholic perspective of artificial intelligence and all that. Anyways, and maybe you and I have talked about this, but they showed this slide, and I'd known this before, where Harvard Business Review has done kind of an 18th month study. So it presented some results from this study they did, and then 18 months later, they presented a similar study with the results that they had. So essentially, they presented the 64 most common uses of AI. So 64 categories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you compare these 18 months apart, the bottom 32, there's some fluctuation. There's some new categories as people learn how to use it and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But one thing consistent is that the number one use in both of the studies, as the results were presented, the number one use of AI globally for all users was therapy. And the second top use was companionship.
Oh.
Yeah, breaks your heart, right? It's like, what?
Yeah.
So the two presenters, one was more technical with what AI is and artificial intelligence and generative AI and how there's a race politically to get first because of such a huge advantage, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The second presenter was much more in the human person and philosophical and all those. And he opened his presentation with an absolutely tragic story that I was not familiar with. And I didn't commit it to memory, so I'm going to miss some of the gaps. But essentially what you had was a 14-year-old boy who discovered AI and discovered the conversational element of prompting and getting questions. And apparently AI, the lowest level generative or lowest level of sophistication is very much tell you what you want to hear kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't challenge your thoughts and all this. Anyways, long story short, this 14-year-old boy became convinced that there was a real person behind the responses coming to him.
Wow.
That it was a woman, that it was one he wanted to have a relationship with,
Yeah.
that the only way to find this relationship was to leave this earth. And Hannah, he eventually committed suicide.
Yeah.
And this was a boy who comes from, middle class home, all kinds of support and all that, and just, got caught up in this. Anyway, so I'm not saying this to be it's kind of depressing to hear this story, and it's just horrific and tragic.
Yeah.
But the allure of the digital space and world and conversation is just so utterly powerful, and yet that's not what we're made for.
No.
It is a counterfeit at best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, any thoughts?
First of all, I do believe that all of this stuff, it can get really almost doomsday a little bit. And I think as Christians too, we have to understand that God knows what he's doing. And this is not my language. Like Father Ricardo, you had him on your podcast. God's not anxious. God knows what's happening. He's allowing these things for a reason. So I think first as Christians, we have to be that voice of encouragement and not of despair and doomsday. Be realistic, say when injustice is occurring and all of that. But that would be my first thought is there's something going on here that we're not seeing yet that is God's plan, and that one day, maybe we will see. We also don't have to see it because he's God. I think for me, that's been the biggest worry and anxiety for me is when AI begins to replace relationship, because it is a counterfeit. It will never match up. And there's always those conversations oh, do you think it'll have emotions? Do you think you'll be able to understand human experience? And immediately I'm like, no, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, not this computer. And I remember having a client, and this was when AI was just starting to become a thing. And she was a teenager, and we were dealing with a breakup. And that was what our counseling sessions were. And we had talked about in session, okay, so let's practice. Let's have a conversation. How are you going to break up with this person? They've been together for so long. Let's talk about what you didn't like about it, what you want to say, what you want to keep to yourself. We were just talking. And then she comes back to session. She goes, yeah, I did it. I just asked AI what to say. And I was like, what? What do you mean? She's like, I just put in ChatGPT what I wanted to say, and I just sent it as a text. And I immediately was like, oh no, processing breakups, especially at the age that this client was, is so important for relationships and so important for your future relationships. Being able to sit with feelings, being able to take from that relationship what you want to repeat, what you don't want to repeat. And it was just not an easy way out, because I'm sure there was a lot going on for this young person. But I was very disturbed in session, and I didn't really know where to go. And it was, the client had dealt with this problem with no emotional experience in it at all. And that's when I was like, okay, that's scary. Writing an email that you don't know how to phrase, that's fine. ChatGPT, go nuts. But the emotional experiences of life, taking that over, that's scary for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Zuckerberg apparently has said that AI is, he says, quote, I don't see AI primarily as a tool. I see AI primarily as a companion. And so when this was said during this conference, my mind, whether it was grace of the Spirit or not, I don't know, but it went to Genesis, when we see in writing God's design for humanity, and that, let us make a companion suitable for him. Right? That's the ideal. All these things are such a deficient counterfeit. But it's not a surprise, because when you think of, we're going places I didn't prepare you, that you think of the pornified culture in which we live, and how sexuality is not the intimate expression of mutual love between not just consenting, but unified people. It can just be truncated from all that, and just an experience of whatever, something so not the fullness of what God had designed. Like, that set us up, like decades of that normalizing that experience set us up for now AI, where it's not the sexual experience, but one of emotional companionship. Like, but the opportunity here, and I like how you said it, like, God is writing a bigger story. He is always writing a bigger story. And the good news is that eventually people are going to come to see this does not satisfy.
Yeah.
And that's when we in the church have the opportunity, because we're experts in humanity, Pope Paul VI said, St. Paul VI, where we can shine, And again, this is why the evangelical nature of the family is so important, because that's the primary unit. That's where the longing for, or the recognition of counterfeits, I think, begin.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of like these human debates happen. One of your questions that you were thinking of asking me was, does everyone need a counselor?
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that was a cheeky question, because it's the idea that everyone needs a counselor is because people's support systems are not there. And so they'll go to a counselor. And our ability to love others, I think we're constantly going to be seeing where we're coming up short all the time, with things that are happening in healthcare right now, with things that are happening around the world with AI. We're constantly being shown where we can love better and where we're not loving people well. And so these counterfeits are so attractive, because we're all desperate for love, and we're all desperate to be known and seen. And so people go to these things, and I say this with like the utmost compassion. It makes sense when they do, whether it be porn, whether it be healthcare stuff, whether it be the way that they're choosing to deal with their suffering through addiction, whatever. It's because of us also that we don't know how to love people well and how to be with people. And also, while you're talking about humanity, he's going crazy in my stomach right now. So
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Waking up.
Yeah.
Okay, so another abrupt change in conversation, but I wanted to get your perspective on this, because you obviously you have a certain level of professional expertise as a registered clinical counselor, soon to get your number on July 1st, and you have all that formation. You've also been working in a parish context and had some experiences with alpha leadership and diocesan and things and all that. So you've got, even at a younger age, kind of a broad perspective on all this. And I'm curious if you could identify maybe some gaps that you see in formation of leaders in the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, my position at St. Pat's, at the parish that I'm at, I think only 3 other parishes in the Archdiocese has a position like this, where the title is discipleship formation coordinator, and which is just a fancy way of saying like you help leaders lead ministries. And you mentioned like Alpha, Bible study, small groups, that sort of thing. So first of all, the fact that that is like not a common role in parishes is, it's not concerning, but it's like, where are the priorities then of churches and of parishes? And so I really love my job. I love being with people. I bring counseling into it all the time. And basically, when we do our trainings, like with ministries and with ministry leaders, a huge chunk of this training that I've chosen to do is how to listen well, how to hold story well, how to disagree charitably with people. And a lot of stuff is also leadership stuff. And we went to an amazing parish conference as well. And they often talk about that churches, correct me if I'm wrong, because you know this as well, but can work like organizations with healthy organizational behaviors and just health in general. And so our parish priest really invests in that, which is I'm very grateful for him that he sees how this matters. And so you asked me about gaps, right? Like gaps in formation. I think hands down, the first thing I would say is human formation is definitely a gap. I think we do well with like spiritual formation, but I think the human formation is lacking considerably in churches and in leadership circles. Often the struggles or the conversations that I'm having, when I get down to it, when I like ask all my questions and like really understand what's at the core of this, it's a human thing. It's not, it's hard to say it's not a spiritual thing because I think they're both together, but I hope you know what I mean by that when I say like human formation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, a lot of that would be sort of intersection of psychology and faith, or even just relational skills. Like when you say human formation, take that away from like a maxim or just a pithy statement. But what are you getting at there?
So I can give some examples, I think. So part of working with the leaders is we do Alpha trainings. And Alpha, for those who don't know, is a really good program that is considered very low barrier, low invite. Shows some videos, small group discussion, friendships are made. It's an amazing program. It's awesome. And what we actually teach people with our trainings is we do some of the Alpha training, but we also teach them how to engage the quiet person in a way that makes them feel known and loved. We teach people how to respond in a way that doesn't shut off the conversation, but allows conversation, including people disagreeing with each other, to happen. And I even said last training, like there was a lot of commotion about like, what if people really disagree? People are constantly bringing in politics, like all of this. And I just kind of said the success of an Alpha table is not whether everyone agrees with each other at the end of it or not. The success of Alpha is that everyone can be themselves and can ask questions and can debate and can question. It can still be in the presence of other people. So we teach that with Alpha. We also are like, when you answer a question, how are you the voice of the Father? And where's your view of the Father coming out in a way that maybe is not helpful for this person to hear? Why are you so uncomfortable with someone disagreeing with Catholic theology? Why are you not more curious about why that happened, their story, their context? And one new scenario that we went over was when someone turns you off, how are you going to maintain that curiosity for the person? So again, it's counseling. It's like And so we teach that. So that's an example with Alpha. And then also with small groups and faith studies, we teach people how to hold certain opinions that don't match like the same thing, or to recognize people's foundations of how they perceive God as Father in their own fatherly, earthly relationships, which a lot of people, they know about. I think we know that there's an association there, but we just don't like to talk about it, like outwardly in churches. That there is an association with fathers, with Mother Mary, with so many things. Like we associate the metaphysical with the physical because that's how we try to make sense of it. And so we try to like talk about that and like really bring out the human in it. Yeah. Does that fit?
No, that's really good. It's really good. It explains well sort of at least one aspect of human formation, maybe it's several layers, but it also comes to mind as ashes to glory. The Lord allows the ashes of our experience to become a glory, an experience of his glory. And the reason why I say that is because what you were telling Alpha Table leaders is exactly what Martin said to you. How do we help you remain curious in this, right?
Yeah.
So it's like kind of a low point, but it's like through God's grace,
Totally.
it turned into something very, very good.
Yeah, totally. And I think the last thing I'll say too with human formation that I think is important in ministries is like boundary setting and having boundaries, and understanding that spiritual trauma is a real thing, and understanding that church as safe place is not everyone's story, and loving people where they're at. Like that's also huge too, especially in ministry. I think ministry can be, if you're not careful, just a lack of boundaries everywhere because it's service and it's, I'm giving my time to the Lord, but it's like, okay, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to that maybe you shouldn't be, like family stuff, like other things?
All good stuff. You're a smarty pants.
No.
So I had asked you a number of other questions, but our time is out. But I'm wondering if there's any of the questions I asked that you haven't had an opportunity to answer. If there's something that you know what, Dad, this has to come out. I got to say this. Anything come to mind?
I did like your question of, does everyone need a counselor?
Yeah.
It was cheeky, but I thought it was.
So Hannah, does everyone need a counselor?
So cheeky, but I think everyone needs relationship, and this kind of goes back to like our AI conversation, and needs a support system. And a lot of communities and cultures, you're kind of born into it. You have people around you. There's certain cultures that are, the term is more collectivist than individual. It's often said in the academic world that the West is more individual. People don't share meals together. They don't raise kids together. They die alone, all of those things. And so the question of, does everyone need a counselor, I think comes from a deep place of longing to be understood and have your people that are in your corner. So once your support system doesn't suffice, whether that be your neighbors, your in-laws, your family, that's when counseling can really come in handy. Or when you are stuck in a support system that kind of becomes like an echo chamber where you all think the same way. And you kind of want a different perspective and you want to be challenged, which even the idea that you want to be challenged is a huge self-awareness in itself, because I think people can go through their whole lives like never wanting to be challenged with what they think. Counseling is also a good way to go.
So let me reflect it back. In a certain way, we all need the benefit of counseling in our life. And that can be through a professional counselor who's registered, or that can be through, a shared experience of community and all the rest of it. But there are times when maybe particular need surfaces or your perspective needs to be broadened or whatever, that definitely it's time.
Yeah.
To seek.
Yeah. So for me, like an example was going through a breakup. I wanted to talk to like my family about it, but there were certain pieces and parts of it that I was so ashamed of that I didn't feel like I could truly be myself, but I knew I needed to process it. And so I saw a counselor once a week for like 3 months, I think. And that was what we talked about. And it was very helpful. And then I stopped and I took a break from counseling, which you absolutely can do. And then I went back for another thing. And yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of the negative impression or mystique or whatever around counseling, like basically when you go to a counselor, you're suicidal or, whatever. I think a lot of that is starting to go away. I think
Yeah.
a lot of even you look at the campaign that, is it Bell or Telus? I forget who, but once a year, and a lot of it is speaking to people to just normalize the experience, particularly to men who just bury it and whatever, right? So anyways, a lot has been done. A lot of positive things have been done to make it more part of our normal experience, as it should be, because we all need counseling. All right, Hannah, you survived. You were nervous.
I'm good, but
good.
moving around a lot, so I need to start changing positions.
I'm sure you do. You've got baby. So, thank you, Hannah. Thanks for making time. I know it's a crazy season because you're ready to give birth. You're off work now officially on mat leave, and you're about to have a little baby, which we get to welcome into this world.
Yeah, crazy. What the heck?
Any day now.
Hopefully, yeah.
It's okay. You're not ready.
I'll never be ready, and it's fine.
That's the whole point. It's the adventure. That's
Were you
what makes
ready
it beautiful.
to have 8 kids, Dad? I don't think.
Oh my gosh. Good thing they come one at a time. No, not ready. And I was the baby of the family.
Yeah.
The first diaper I changed was Jacob's.
Yep. So is Marco's going to be his first diaper to change will be our kid too.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have that in common.
Yeah.
Many things. Anyways, we got to pause there. Thank you, Hannah. We'll do this again after baby's a few months old at least. Listeners, I'm sure this has been a blessing. Oh, do you want to direct them somewhere where they can, I don't know, find out more about you?
I would say, given our social media talk,
yep.
Personal, I'm going to share my professional Instagram, the one that I'm creating for counseling. It's on Instagram and it's Hannah Counseling _ And right now I don't have any bookings because I'm on mat leave, but I try to post certain things and mental health stuff.
Right on. All right. Thanks again, listeners. I'm sure this has been a blessing to you, and we will see you next time.